Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. Imagine standing at your own rehearsal dinner, surrounded by family and friends, thinking you're hours away from marrying the love of your life. When her best friend stands up and exposes her affair with her boss. Gasps fill the room, but instead of shock, her family turns on you, blaming you for ruining everything. Her mom screams, she begs, and still you say nothing. Then, just when they think they've cornered you, you pull out. A recording that changes the entire room's atmosphere. In seconds, what followed wasn't just the end of a wedding, it was the beginning of the best decision of my life. And months later, a single letter arrived that proved. Walking away had been the ultimate revenge. I don't think anyone walks into a rehearsal dinner expecting their life to derail. For me, that night was supposed to be the last calm evening before the chaos of the wedding weekend began. The night where family and friends laughed, toasted to love, and reassured me that all the stress of planning was worth it. We had the dinner at this small Italian restaurant my fiancée, Emily, loved. It was cozy, candlelit, with exposed brick walls, and the kind of ambiance where you could imagine an accordion player strolling in at any moment. Both of our families were there, plus our closest friends. I'd even arranged a short slideshow of our relationship, pictures from vacations, silly moments, and the day I proposed. I'd been up until 3 a.m. putting it together. When I arrived, Emily was already there, working the room. She looked stunning, in that kind of way where you notice every other guy glance at her, and you tell yourself it's just because she's beautiful and you're lucky. She was laughing with her coworker, Denise, a tall, sharp-witted woman I'd met only a handful of times. Dinner started normally. Wine was poured, appetizers came out, and my dad made a short speech about commitment and patience. Everyone clapped. I felt happy. But then Denise stood up. I remember it so clearly because she didn't just stand. She straightened her back like she was about to give a TED Talk, glass in hand, eyes fixed on Emily. The room quieted. Emily gave her a look. I couldn't tell if it was confusion or panic. I think, Denise started, that before we all go through with tomorrow, there's something you should all know. You could feel the air shift. Her voice wasn't slurred like she was drunk. It was steady, deliberate. Emily has been involved with her boss for months. I found out when I overheard them in her office after hours. And before you think this is some mistake, I've seen the messages. I've seen enough. The table went silent, except for the faint clink of someone setting down a fork. Emily's face drained of color, then flushed bright red. She tried to laugh it off. Denise, what are you doing? This isn't funny. Denise didn't waver. You told me yourself, Emily. You said you weren't sure you could break it off because of what he's promised you at work. I sat there, my mind buzzing, every muscle in my body tight. I'd suspected something, but hearing it out loud, in front of my parents, her parents, and every important person in our lives, was like being punched in the ribs. Emily's mom shot me a glare like I'd orchestrated this. How could you let this happen tonight? You're ruining everything. Me? I was ruining everything? I hadn't even opened my mouth. Emily's dad started murmuring to her mom. Her brother shook his head at me, and I realized they weren't going to turn on her. They were turning on me. Emily stood, tears welling in her eyes. Please, just don't listen to her. Babe, I'm sorry if anything I did made you doubt me, but this isn't what it sounds like. I stayed silent. Her mom's voice rose, sharp and accusing. Say something. Are you just going to sit there and let your fiancé get humiliated? My chest was pounding, but my mind was strangely clear. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. Ever since I'd gotten confirmation from a source I trusted, not Denise, but someone else, that Emily had been lying to me. I'd even gone one step further. I had a recording, one that left no room for doubt. But this wasn't the time to argue or shout or make a scene in anger. That's what they expected me to do. Lose control so they could paint me as the problem. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, looked around the table, and finally spoke. Are you all sure you want me to talk? The silence that followed was thick. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Her mother glared harder. When no one answered, I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped the screen, and set it on the table. The sound of Emily's voice filled the room, her laughter, her calling her boss by a nickname I'd never heard. Then, her saying clearly, "Don't worry about him. He thinks we're just working late." Gasps. Denise's eyes flicked toward me. She hadn't known I had this. My mom covered her mouth. Emily froze, her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't process what was happening. Her father muttered, "Emily?" But she didn't respond. I stood up, picked up my phone, and slid it into my pocket. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said, keeping my voice calm. As I walked toward the door, Emily reached out, her voice breaking. "Please, just wait." I didn't. I stepped out into the cool night air, the sound of muffled voices chasing me down the street. I didn't have a plan for what came next. All I knew was that I wasn't going to be standing at the altar the next day pretending everything was fine. And as for my self-respect, I took it with me. When I walked out of that restaurant, I didn't even know where I was going. My car was parked 2 blocks away, and with every step I took, the noise from inside, muffled voices, chairs scraping, faded into the hum of traffic. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the sheer adrenaline of holding my ground in there. I got into my car and just sat for a while, gripping the steering wheel, watching the condensation on the windshield form patterns in the streetlight glow. My phone buzzed, first once, then again. Then it became a constant stream of notifications, texts, missed calls, voicemails. Emily, her mom, her dad, even my own sister, who had been seated near the bar. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I drove to my apartment, the one I'd kept after Emily moved into my place temporarily last year. She'd pushed me to give it up, saying it was a waste of money, but I'd kept the lease for reasons I couldn't fully explain at the time. Now I knew exactly why I had. When I walked in, the familiar quiet felt like armor. No accusatory glares, no forced apologies, just space to think. I opened my laptop and began organizing everything I had collected over the past few weeks. See, Denise's speech wasn't what broke the engagement. It just sped things up. I'd already known. A month earlier, one of Emily's co-workers, someone who owed me a favor, called me after hours. He told me he'd seen Emily in her boss's office with the lights off, door closed. He said when he knocked, she took a while to answer, and her hair was messy. He didn't have photos, but his tone told me enough. I thanked him, hung up, and decided right then. I needed proof. So I dug. I checked our phone records. I noticed late-night calls to a number I didn't recognize, always after I'd gone to bed. I ran the number through a reverse lookup. It was him. Then I remembered Emily had synced her work email to the laptop at my place a while ago, back when she needed to print something and couldn't get into the office. She'd forgotten to log out. I told myself I wouldn't snoop unless I had to. But the truth was, I already had to. What I found wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. Plans for late meetings followed by, "See you at your place." Inside jokes that made my stomach turn. And the worst part? She complained about me to him. Called me too serious and said she didn't know if she could marry someone who didn't get her lifestyle. That's when I bought a small voice recorder. I left it in her purse one night when she went to a work dinner. She didn't notice. The next day, I retrieved it and listened. That's where the recording from the rehearsal dinner came from. I hadn't planned on using it in public. At first, I thought I'd just keep it for myself, as insurance, in case she tried to turn things on me. But when Denise stood up and exposed her in front of everyone, I realized I'd been given the perfect moment. No shouting, no name-calling. Just the truth, in her own voice. Back at my apartment, I made 3 folders on my laptop, one with the emails, one with the phone records, and one with the audio. Then I made backups on a flash drive and a cloud account she didn't know about. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 19 voicemails. My phone also had several messages from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her extended family. The first voicemail I listened to was from Emily, crying. "I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. Can we please talk before you do something stupid?" The second was from her mom. Her tone was colder. "You've humiliated our family. You think this is going to make you happy? Grow up and work it out like adults." The third was Denise. "I didn't know you had proof. Good for you. She deserved it." I deleted the rest without listening. By noon, my sister showed up at my door. She had this look, part concern, part frustration. "You can't just disappear," she said. "Yes, I can. I told her. She sighed. Emily's saying you ambushed her, that you've been distant for months. Her parents think you planned this to embarrass her. They're not entirely wrong, I said. But I didn't lie to anyone. That's the thing. People will twist themselves into knots to protect the image they have of someone. Emily's family didn't want to believe she could cheat, so they made it about me. Fine. I could live with that. What I couldn't live with was staying tied to someone who looked me in the eyes and told me she loved me, while telling someone else I wasn't enough. Over the next few days, I blocked her on everything: social media, phone, even email. I sent her a single message through my lawyer. The wedding is off, I expect my share of the deposits refunded, and I want my belongings back. That was it. Her response, relayed through the lawyer, was short. I'll return your stuff if you delete the recordings. I didn't reply. Instead, I had the locks changed at my place and went through every shared account we had, removing her access. She'd left clothes, makeup, and some personal items at my apartment, but I boxed them up and arranged for her to pick them up at a neutral location. When she came to get them, she didn't look glamorous like she had at the rehearsal dinner. Her hair was pulled back, eyes red. She tried to catch my gaze, but I kept my eyes on the paperwork. She signed, took the boxes, and left without a word. It should have ended there. But people like Emily don't just fade quietly from your life. 2 weeks later, I started getting messages from mutual friends saying she was telling everyone I was controlling, insecure, and had trust issues that pushed her into someone else's arms. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't have to, because I knew, sooner or later, she'd trip over her own story. And when she did, I'd be ready. And when that moment came, it would make the rehearsal dinner look like a warm-up. About a month after the rehearsal dinner, the chaos seemed to die down, at least on the surface. Emily had stopped calling, her family had gone quiet, and my own friends seemed to be treading lightly around me. I thought maybe finally things were going to fade into the background. I was wrong. One Friday morning, while I was sipping coffee in my apartment, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend.
Named Kyle. It was a screenshot from social media. Emily had posted a long healing journey update. The caption read, "Sometimes people don't understand your soul. They feel threatened by your light. I was trapped in a relationship with someone who didn't believe in me, who tried to control me. I'm free now and happier than ever." She'd attached a photo of herself in a sunny cafe, smiling like nothing had happened. The comments were full of people cheering her on, some mutual acquaintances saying things like, "So proud of you, girl." And then I saw it. A comment from her boss, the guy she'd been having an affair with. "Keep shining." That was it. That was the push I needed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. See, I'd been sitting on more than just that voice recording from her purse. While I'd been gathering evidence before the rehearsal dinner, I'd also stumbled onto some less flattering details about her work situation. Specifically, I'd found several emails where she complained about her job, said she wanted to leave, and, this part was gold, mentioned that her boss had made promises to get her promoted if she stayed close. Now I wasn't about to expose anything that would break laws or cross a line I couldn't come back from. But I knew enough about how her company's HR department operated to realize those emails would raise eyebrows. And if that wasn't enough, the time-stamped phone logs and hotel receipts, all of which were tied to company-paid trips, painted a pretty uncomfortable picture. Still, I didn't rush. Timing mattered. I let her keep talking about her freedom for another week. I let her feel secure enough to think I'd gone away quietly, and then I set the trap. First, I reached out to an old college acquaintance who happened to work in the HR department at her company. I didn't give away everything at once, just mentioned that I had some documentation that might concern them. She was curious. Second, I printed out some of the highlight evidence. Nothing too explosive, just enough to make them want to dig deeper. The emails where she bragged about skipping meetings to hang out with her boss during work trips? Yeah, those went in the first batch. Within 3 days, the HR contact called me back. She didn't say much, just thanked me for the information and said the company would look into it. Then I waited. It took 2 weeks for the news to trickle back to me, but when it did, it was better than I'd imagined. The company had launched an internal review. Emily and her boss had both been temporarily relieved of their duties, pending the outcome. I hadn't even needed to go public. Her own professional world was now looking at her differently.
That's when the calls started again. First from her. I didn't answer. Then from her mom. Same result. Then from an unknown number, which turned out to be her dad. He actually sounded worried. Look, I know you two had your differences, but Emily's in trouble. She says you've got stuff that could ruin her life. I didn't deny it. I just said, if she's worried about the truth coming out, maybe she should stop lying to people. That was when the tone shifted. You don't understand, he said. She could lose everything. I hung up. The next day, I came home to find someone waiting outside my building. It was Emily. She looked smaller somehow. Hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing sweatpants, no makeup. I need to talk to you, she said. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied, unlocking the door. Please, just 5 minutes. I let her in, mostly out of curiosity. She sat on the edge of my couch, twisting her hands together. They're saying I might get fired, my boss too. They think I leaked something or that I've been inappropriate. She glanced at me, searching for some sign of sympathy. I gave her none. You want me to fix it? I asked flatly. She hesitated, then nodded. I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But
this is my career. My life. The irony nearly made me laugh. My life. As if she hadn't burned down the one we were building together. What do you want? I asked. I need you to delete whatever you have. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please. Her voice cracked on that last word. I leaned back in my chair. You mean lie for you? She didn't answer. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I said, no. I'm not doing anything. I didn't make those choices for you. You did. Live with them. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue. She just stood, walked to the door, and left without looking back. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat on the balcony, watching the city lights blink in the distance. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. What I felt was lighter. And that's when I realized the real revenge wasn't in exposing her. It wasn't in the recording, or the emails, or even the HR investigation. The real revenge was in walking away without ever giving her what she wanted most. My attention, my forgiveness, my willingness to pretend it hadn't happened. A week later, I heard through mutual friends that Emily had left the company. Her boss, too. Apparently, they were both seeking opportunities elsewhere. The two of them were still together, at least for now. But without her job, without the wedding, without the image she'd built for herself, she was starting over from scratch. And me, I'd already started living my own life again. I'd taken a new job offer in another city, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating. Slowly, on my own terms. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled it. If I wish I'd stayed quiet, kept the peace, avoided the mess. I tell them the truth. I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it. But I'll never regret standing up for myself. Because in the end, self-respect is worth more than any ring, any wedding, or any happy ending built on lies. And Emily? She'll remember that night, the night at the rehearsal dinner when her own words turned the whole room against her, for the rest of her life. So will I. If you want, I can now create a clickbait-style YouTube thumbnail summary in 350-400 characters for this one that hooks viewers instantly without spoiling too much. Do you want me to do that next? You said, write part 4 of 2,000 characters. ChatGPT said, got it. Here's part 4 at about 2,000 characters, written like an epilogue to tie the story together and give a satisfying final punch. It had been 6 months since the night I walked out of my own rehearsal dinner. In that time, the dust had settled. At least for me. I'd moved to a new city, landed a position I actually enjoyed, and found a small apartment with a balcony that caught the sunset just right. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Emily, on the other hand, had become a ghost in the background of mutual acquaintances' stories. I'd hear little updates here and there, that she'd tried freelancing, that she and her ex-boss had broken up, that she was living with a cousin while figuring things out. One night, while out with friends, someone mentioned seeing her at a cafe. She looked different, they said carefully. Not bad, just not like before. I nodded but didn't ask for more. It wasn't my business anymore. That realization felt like the real victory. A few weeks later, a small package arrived at my new address. No return label, just my name in handwriting I recognized instantly. Inside was a note. I know I can't undo what I did, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I hope you're happy, wherever you are. I folded it once and put it in a drawer, not out of sentiment, but because it no longer hurt to look at it. The anger had burned away, replaced by something calmer. Not forgiveness exactly, but freedom. That weekend, as I sat on the balcony with a coffee watching the last light fade, I realized something. Her betrayal had been a disaster, yes, but it had also been the push I needed to reclaim myself. And that was the kind of ending no recording, no confrontation, and no revenge could ever match.